on the other side, I think students will listen to that and go, well, it's meaningless. I'm like, no, it's not meaningless. You're starting to learn how to communicate as a healthcare provider. So first question here is one, the student says, my advisor told me that I should try to get, quote, real clinical experience, and that my position as a caregiver in a nursing home is not as valuable as clinical experience in a hospital or clinical setting. They said I should try to work as a medical scribe or medical assistant, which is viewed as more favorable by the admissions committee than my experience as a caregiver. Do you think this is true? I love it. My advisor said.
Well, I think, I think that not all clinical experience is the same. I would say that. I would also say that all clinical experience, regardless of what it is, can be valuable, and that the value of clinical experience is generated by the student themselves and how they talk about that in their application, in an interview setting, whatever. So if all a student has is nursing home, caregiver experience, then I think that can be incredibly valuable and can be more valuable to that student than a student who has scribed for a year and doesn't have a clue what's going on and doesn't care.
Yep.
And so I think it's all about how you talk about it and what it means to you and the depth in which you go into it in your application. It's the what, it's not the what, it's the so what. We say that constantly, but it is the so what here that's super applicable in this case. So would I think it would be great for that student to broaden their experience to other types of clinical experience? Absolutely. That'd be cool for anybody. But if that's not possible, or if you don't want to because you really enjoy the nursing home or whatever, then you create that value and you go with it and you talk about it in your application, and why you enjoy it and why it's valuable to you and what you've learned out of it. And then you go with that. But I don't agree with the premise of the statement by the advisor that says that in and of itself, X is always better than Y. I don't agree with that.
All right. Any other pre-med questions you guys want to type in the chat?
Yeah, just type it in. And I'll just make a further comment about the clinical experience that we were talking about with that first question. And that is, I think that students often want to experience the cool things from the get-go. They want to start out and they want to see whether they're volunteering at a hospital or whether they're doing clinical experiences paid or unpaid or whatever. They want to be able to see the cool things and experience the cool experiences, and that's just rare in my opinion. And I've heard students that get frustrated with clinical experience or with volunteering because they're doing mundane things or just things that they define as don't matter. And so what I would say to that is that students, again, I'll say this over and over, you're going to create your own definition of what matters. I've heard over and over again students who have said that they started out filing in the hospital or they started out doing something else, and because of their dependability and reliability, they worked their way up to being able to see the cool stuff because they were there constantly and they were doing the hard work and they were showing benefit to the organization. And so what I would say for students out there who are stuck in that sort of mundane filing or answering a phone or whatever, keep it up and work hard and show that you're committed to doing what you're doing. And my expectation is opportunities will arise if you will show that you're there for the long haul, that you're there to do whatever they want you to do, and that you're going to do it with a smile on your face. So keep that in mind as you're getting these clinical experiences, and you'll be able to see some of the cool stuff sooner or later. Is my feeling.
So there was a follow-up question around this. Student says, Dr. Wright, are you familiar with Dr. Bob Mann's free clinic at Mission Arlington? Are you a fan of that sort of experience?
I am familiar with that, actually. I used to live in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and Mission Arlington has been going on for, gosh, I would say at least, 30 years or probably more than that. And it's a free clinic sponsored by some religious organizations there in the Arlington area. And I am a fan of that. I mean, I think this reaches out to those who need health care, who need things that because they don't have insurance or they don't have any other possibility for health care, and they're getting it through this experience. And for students being able to do something like that really shows healthcare at a very fundamental level where it reaches to people who need it the most. And so I do like that. I do like that experience. And I think, again, you create the meaning of it as you do it. And so that's what I would say. Ryan, are we back on?
I'm back. I got you.
Yay, we missed you so much.
Yeah, we did miss you.
All right, we got a long question that got cut off, but I think we can get kind of the gist here.
Okay.
Student asks, I've recently decided to finally pursue medicine now that I'm in my junior year as a non-trad. I've worked as a CNA several years ago for about 2 years, and now I am volunteering for an in-home hospice care and shadowing online given COVID restrictions. I'm concerned that I won't have enough time to acquire in-person shadowing experiences before I can apply. I'm concerned that owing to the pandemic, I won't have enough or any in-person shadowing experience before I apply. Would e-shadowing be beneficial? Would be enough?
Blah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, gosh, we talk about this every week, basically.
Yeah.
And and so my question is, so I understand the question. I understand where the concern for the question is coming from.
Yep.
But my point here is, what choice do you have? There's no option here.
Yeah. And
medical schools are going to recognize that, and that they're dealing with COVID just like everybody else is. So you do what you can do. You do the e-shadowing, continue volunteering for the hospice care, and just do what you can. And you've got some CNA experience from a couple of years ago. So you depend on all that, and you put it out there. And my guess is that medical schools are going to be responsive to that, and are going to understand that this is the way things are right now. So
yeah,
but I get it, but I don't think that the concern is I don't think that concern on your part as the student should be very pronounced just because you don't have any options. So there's nothing you can do.
Well, let's expand the question a little bit and say, for someone specifically in this situation, should a student look at taking a gap year with the assumption, right? This is a big assumption, that in-person shadowing is going to be back in any significant way for the next application cycle.
Right. And that makes a lot of assumptions. And so I'm not a fan of that, taking a gap year just for that reason alone. I don't think that, what if everybody took a gap year this year? We wouldn't have any applicants to medical school.
100% acceptance rate to medical school.
Right. So I would say no. I wouldn't recommend that. I'd say go for it, and you depend on the medical schools to act reasonably, which they're going to do, and they're going to look at you within the context of everything else that's going on. So that's all you can do, really.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
I agree.
This is not a question, but somebody just wrote, "I did not know you can read minds, Dr. Gray."
Well, obviously, it's not something I like to talk a lot about, but it is a special. No, but seriously, I think and not to toot my own horn, but I think that's why I'm able to connect with the premeds the community and why I've been able to have a big impact on them is, number one, I've been in their shoes, right? I've been through this process. I understand what it's like to be a pre-med. I understand what it's like to doubt yourself at every step. And so the biggest thing that I do during these sessions, or when I talk to a student, or whenever I do any sort of podcast or anything, is I'm like, oh, what the heck would I be concerned about if I was still a pre-med student? And
Sure.
Empathy 101. Although I don't show empathy in a lot of places in my life, but here I do.
Well, our proverbial popcorn, I'm always thinking about questions in terms of kernels popping. It's just taken a little while to get going today.
Well, I want to say, before we get to the next question, let me just say a couple of things. For those of you, I don't know how many people read my blog on the MAPT website every week, but last week my post on the blog was about voting, and so I want to encourage everyone to go out and vote this year, and mainly because healthcare is one of the topics that is a big topic, regardless of what side you're on. If you're this way or that way, or if you're liberal or conservative or whatever. Healthcare is a big topic, and pre-meds are entering into the world of healthcare, and whatever happens in the future in terms of policy, it's going to affect you in a direct way. And so you need to understand what the issues are, what the potential solutions are that are being talked about on both ends of the spectrum. And you need to vote. And I really encourage students to look at the issues surrounding healthcare in America, and look at it from both perspectives, and really evaluate kind of what you think the issues are, and how you feel about the topics, and look at both perspectives on either side of the political spectrum, and try to get make an opinion of your own about what that means. This could easily come up in as a topic in an interview, for example. It could come up in a variety of ways, and it fundamentally will affect all of us as we need healthcare, but it will also affect you in terms of your future in the healthcare in the field, and how you will practice medicine in the future is going to be affected by these policy issues. And so I really encourage you to get out and vote, inform yourself about the issues, and vote. So that's my plug for voting.
Vote. Yeah, and it's interesting. So just kind of to piggyback on that in terms of left versus right, conservative, liberal, etc. I listened to an amazing podcast episode on Planet Money, and it was framed Canada, or Canada Framed, or something like that. And it was an amazing discussion around how our political system, how our lobbying system in this country completely screwed everyone over in terms of citizens in this country. The healthcare lobby, the hospital groups, the private insurance groups, the pharmaceutical industries had a huge PR push to make it look like the Canadian healthcare system was this horrible thing, that you would die in the hallway of the hospital because they didn't have room for you, et cetera. And they took one picture out of context and made it look like that was the whole system. And it was someone who was like in charge of all of that, basically grew a conscience after someone died because the health insurance company that he was representing delayed care for too long, and the patient ended up dying even as they reversed course because of political pressure and just the publicity. And he grew conscious, wrote a book about it, and I was a big whistleblower in the industry. And it's just amazing to think about, right? That's our capitalistic country that we have. And right or left, I think the goal of coming to the table and discussing it is to go, well, is that right? Yes or no? And I would assume most people would say, no, that's not right that we do that. So how do we go from here? And I
How do we
think we
fix it?
need
Yeah.
both of those voices. We need a conservative voice and a liberal voice to come to the conclusion of where do we move forward from here. So
Yeah, absolutely.
good discussions.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, here we got a couple of questions. Good.
What are your thoughts on being a standardized patient? Is it a good way to see patient care from the patient's point of view?
I love this question.
Yeah, I've talked to a lot of students who are standardized patients in the medical schools.
Yeah.
I would love to hear your point of view because I have one.
Well, I have a point of view, and I have to admit that it is somewhat biased because I myself was a standardized patient. And I loved it. I loved doing it because it was super cool, and it sort of allowed me to sort of fantasize about this latent actor that was in me somehow, and be this this Emmy winning star or whatever. And but I like virtually every medical school uses standardized patients. If you don't know what a standardized patient is, basically an actor who portrays a series of symptoms. Some standardized patients only get a history taken from them, so it's all verbal. But there are standardized patients who actually get physical examinations as well, and I think it is a good way to view. Now, so your point is it a good way to see patient care from a patient's point of view? I think the best way to see patient care from a patient's point of view is to actually be the patient, which we all are. We all go to the doctor and everything. But I think I think the benefit here is it benefits the educational process of these students.
Yep.
And it really helps them learn from both their mentors' points of view, as well as, because most standardized patients get some input into how things went in the history or in the physical exam or whatever's going on. And so I loved being a standardized patient. I think students benefit from standardized patients, and I'm a real fan of it. I've had other acquaintances and friends who have done it, and they enjoy it, and so it's a great thing. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this, Ryan.
Yeah, I think my thought is that it's not a good way to see the healthcare system. Right? It's a good way to have some fun interaction with the medical students or PA students or whoever it is that you're interacting with.
Exactly.
It's obviously a forced scenario. As a standardized patient, you are basically an actor, and you are given strict kind of guidelines on what to say. If they ask this type of question, then you respond with this. Here are your symptoms. Don't deviate. And so your specific interaction is very fixed. Yeah. And obviously you are interacting with a student who is learning how to communicate with you. And so just for a tiny little bit of background, so this is what I teach when I'm able to go to the University of Colorado School of Medicine. Is I am one of the instructors for their communications course. So it's not a physical exam course that I teach, but it's the actual communication. So it's just in a classroom setting, and it's the first year and second year medical students learning how to communicate with standardized patients, learning how to take a history, learning how to communicate bad outcomes or whatever it is. Right. And so I have some experience on that side as well. I've never personally been a standardized patient. And so students who have this experience, I think, do both things. I think they lean on the experience too hard and say, oh, look, this was an amazing experience. I got to learn all about this stuff. I'm like, well, no, you didn't really learn anything other than you got to see a student be taught. It doesn't teach you about healthcare. It doesn't teach you about medicine. It doesn't really teach you anything other than it's cool to be in a medical school or wherever you are. And then I think on the other side, I think students will listen to that and go, well, it's meaningless. I'm like, no, it's not meaningless. You're starting to learn how to communicate as a healthcare provider. And that's huge. And maybe that'll give you a little bit of head start when you yourself are going through this course. But I wouldn't lean on it to try to sell it as anything super fancy to help you get into medical school.
Agreed. I think you're right. I think it's cool. It's beneficial for the students. But yeah, I think in terms of the application process, I don't think it's going to mean a whole lot.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to reiterate, right, it's not clinical experience.
Correct. Yes, I agree with that. It's pseudo-clinical.
It is pseudo-clinical. Maybe an odd question, but is there any sort of value in having gone through major surgeries or health issues in any way? In a way, you did get to see healthcare from the patient's perspective.
Yeah, this comes up quite a bit, I think, in applications. Either major surgeries or healthcare issues of your own or of a close family member. Mm-hmm. These are very common scenarios that are covered in applications. Most of the time, they're either covered as this is what was the seed for my interest in medicine. Mm-hmm. Was this event happening in my life or in my mother's life or whatever? Or this is what really focused me and I learned a lot from it. And this propelled me into really, being sure that this is the path that I wanted to go down. Yep. And so I definitely think it's valuable. Of course, depending on how you talk about it and yep. what you talk about in terms of the learning aspect of the experience. Again, it's not the what. It's not that you had this major surgery or illness or whatever. It's the so what. It's about, okay, we hear these stories a lot. So what? We got to hear deeper about why this is important to you.
Yeah. So
yes, it's not an odd question at all, I don't think, but I think it's all in how you talk about it.
Yeah, it comes up all the time, and obviously in my personal statement book, I talk about the seed. And for a lot of students, personal illness, injury, it is a seed because that's the first time you've been exposed to healthcare. You're in and around healthcare.
Yeah.
Where I think students fall flat is exactly your point, is the what versus the so what. I think a lot of students just stop at, well, I had this experience, therefore I should be a physician. And I always, my rebuttal to that is, well, lots of people are injured, have illnesses, mm-hmm. and they don't want to be physicians. Why was it this experience for you? Or lots of people lose parents at an early age to cancer, to other illnesses and injuries. Mm-hmm. Why did that experience propel you forward to want to explore this career? What did you see? What did you experience? What did you feel? That reflection is usually what's missing with students, and that's that so what that you love to harp on, because it's so important.
Yep, absolutely it is.
Ooh. So what?
Yeah.
So what? Can you talk about what you think are the 3 or more biggest turnoffs in an application from a reviewer's perspective?
Oh wow!
All right. Let's do this. Let's do this.
What not to do?
No. What's that show? That Steve Harvey hosts now.
I don't know.
It. What's the show? Rachel, you know.
Family Feud.
Yeah, Family Feud. We're gonna do it. Right. We're gonna do it Family Feud style.
What's up on the board?
We asked one former director of admissions the 3 biggest turnoffs.
Oh wow! I think there are a number of things that kind of come to my mind initially. One of them is when a student has just flat out mistakes in their application, misspelled words, bad grammatical errors, things that any applicant, if they're even, a little bit careful on the application, would catch. And it's very frustrating for a reviewer to see that. This is literally probably up until that point in this person's life the most important thing that they've ever done. and they screwed it up. And so that is a big turnoff to me. And I know we used to discuss that a lot in the admissions committee when something would come up with flags like that. It's just like, really? And I think I've talked about this before. We had a student one year who spoke throughout his application that he wanted to go into surgery, and he misspelled surgery every time. Yeah. And so needless to say, he didn't get in, but at least he didn't get into our school. So
I always get lots of students, like it inevitably happens as soon as you click submit. That's when the one typo pops out, and I'm like, calm down, it's all right. Like, there's nothing you can do about it now. If it's just that one, I'm sure it's fine.
No, I'm talking about trend. I'm talking about a trend, or a number of different errors, or just I'm talking about something that comes across as this student was not careful.
Yep.
They did not put their full energy and their full focus into this process. They half-assed it throughout, and this is what you got. And so that is not the kind of medical student that we wanted to, because that's the kind of medical student they're going to be in school. They're going to half-ass it throughout, and that's just not that's not what we wanted. And I think there's a lot of medical schools that they're just not going to want that kind of student.
Yep. Exactly.
So and I think I think another thing that comes across poorly in an application that can be a big turnoff is arrogance, and arrogance comes out in a lot of different ways in an application. We really literally had applicants who, I mean, to hear the tone of their personal statement, you would think literally they were on the verge of a Nobel Prize. I mean, it was in the mail or something, whatever. And it just seeped with this sort of overinflated, idea of their own value or whatever. And nobody likes that. It's just like, something very close to that is when a student talks so negatively about the American healthcare system or about doctors that they've experienced, and that they want to be better than all the doctors they've ever experienced. And they may not say it in those words, but the tone of the personal statement comes across as, I am single-handedly going to change the way the public views medicine. And it just, that's a big turnoff, because you're dealing in a group of an admissions committee of at least half, if not probably more, clinicians. And so what you're saying, you're basically indicting them in with what you're saying, and it's just it's just, come on, really. Get a bit of a clue here. So that's a big turn.
I see that a bunch, where unfortunately a loved one or themselves were treated poorly, and they're like, oh, this is terrible. The healthcare system's horrible, and I alone can save it.
We've heard that before.
I don't know where. Yeah, definitely. Was that 3? 1, 2.
I think that was 3.
All right, good enough.
Yeah,
those are big ones, though.
Yeah.
Difference between SMP and postbac. So M as in Mary, not N as in Nancy, or in the military. I need to stick to my military. M as in Mike and N as in November. So SMP and postbac. So all SMPs are postbacs, but not all postbacs are SMPs.
Correct.
Is one way of putting it that I often do. So just generically, write a postbac is anything after your bachelor's degree. And then in terms of what we talk about in terms of getting into medical school, a general postbac is an undergraduate level coursework, whether you do it at a formal postbac where it's a specific school or curriculum set up that you apply to to take the courses, and whether it's a career changer post-bac where you haven't taken any science courses and now you're switching careers and you want to go to medical school, or you just graduated, you want to go to medical school after not taking any science courses, versus an academic enhancer program where you maybe were pre-med or some other science major and you have lots of science courses under your belt and you just need to improve your GPA. Or you just go back to community college or a 4-year university and do it yourself. Versus a special master's program, which is master level coursework, but usually a very specific curriculum that these schools set up and charge you a crap ton of money to do.
And sometimes they're connected with a medical school.
Yep, and undergraduate postbacs potentially are as well.
Yeah,
formal ones.
But a lot of times there are SMPs that are resident at medical
You're taking
schools.
Classes with the first year students.
That's correct. Yep. That's correct.
Definitely.
And students often think, oh, that must mean, I'll have a, better chance of getting in somewhere or whatever. And I don't know if that's true or not. I guess in some cases it might be, and others, I'm not sure. So
it's a little bit of cold hard facts on whether or not you can handle medical school, because you are basically in medical school.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I did a postbac that turned into a second bachelor's degree at the same institution as my original undergrad. Is this still considered a postbac? Yeah.
Absolutely it is. It's post-bachelor's degree. Yeah. So yeah, absolutely it's considered that. Now I will say I don't recommend that pathway. Doing a postbac at the same institution, I think in fact that sometimes it hurts a little bit. Plus, it's a new start. Sometimes it's beneficial to get to a new institution and kind of start over. And really, with the faculty and everything, they don't really know you, and so there are no biases or expectations either way. And I think that it can be beneficial to go to a different institution, but it's not necessarily bad to stay at the same institution. I just think that optimally, it might be better to move to a different school.
Yeah,
if you have that choice.
It's very similar to students who need to retake the MCAT, and they retake the same full-length exam, and they go, "Oh, look, I got a 510." I'm like, "Well, I took the same test 3 months ago and got a 500. So is it really a 510?"
Yeah.
Right. So that's where there's some benefit of going somewhere else, because are you just kind of using what you've learned before at the same institution, kind of the same curriculum, the same tests, and you're doing better because of that, or are you just moving forward?
Yeah.
So a little bit extra here, the student saying that the original degree was in business. So this would be almost like a career changer post-bac, and it probably is much better. It looks a little bit better.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. And like I said, and she said at the end of that, is it still bad? I didn't say it was bad to start with.
Yeah.
I said maybe optimally, moving to a different institution would be better, but it's not bad. And I definitely think that you're right that being in a total different field at the same institution can really changes that dynamic quite a bit. And so, I think that's fine.
Yep.
That does make a difference.
Yeah. Can you suggest a book or a podcast where one can learn about the U.S. healthcare system? I do have a book. It's called The Healthcare Handbook, and it was written by medical students back in the day. I think they're on their second or third version at this point. That's the one that I get a lot of feedback from students after reading it based on my recommendation. They go, "Oh, now I understand."
Yeah. And I'd like to put a big plug in. This is a little bit different in terms of the authorship and the topics involved, but I'm a real fan of Atul Gawande and his books.
I love Atul,
and he is so good, and he's such a good writer, and the perspective that he brings on the various topics of his books are just incredible. And I do think you get a little bit of a window into the healthcare system, not in the same way that you're going to get a window into the politics of it all and the structure, et cetera. But I do think you get a little bit of a window into into the process of healthcare and of
Yep.
patient centeredness or whatever.
Yep.
And but he's such a good writer that I think it's the books, and they're easy reads. They're not big long books, and they're really easy to read. And so if any of you out there haven't read any books on by Atul Gawande, I would really recommend that you pick one up.
Yeah, Being Mortal's great. Good look at end of life care, specifically here. Checklist Manifesto as a pilot, I think is phenomenal. I love checklists and standard operating procedure type things. And then one other one, kind of to piggyback on that as well, is a recent one that I read from Dan Heath called Upstream. And I didn't know it when I started reading it, but it's basically all about the healthcare system.
Right.
And that's a really, really good book.
One more plug for a book that I think every pre-med should read. And this book, I think I have it on my shelf somewhere, is called The Amazing... Oh, no. I'm just now blanking on the... Here it is right here. I do have it. It is called The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks.
Oh, yes.
The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks. And this book by Rebecca Skloot is an amazing book. It is fantastically written and really gives you a window into there's so much there. There's social issues, there's racial, ethnic issues, there's medical ethics issues. There's just a lot packed into this book, and it's so fantastically written. It just captivates you. So I would strongly recommend any pre-med student read The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks. Super great.
I have
book.
Not read that one yet. I know of her and her cell line and everything that it's done and the ethics behind it, but I've never read the book.
The book is fantastic. So
I will add it to my Audible.
I'm going to give you an assignment.
Mapped book club.
Yeah, right.
Does it matter if I don't have any clinical volunteering hours and less than 100 hours of non-clinical volunteering? I have more than 15,000 hours of paid clinical experience. Thanks for your help. So this is one of those big myths that we're constantly fighting, that there's a difference or one is better than the other between paid versus clinical, or paid versus volunteer clinical experience, right? Clinical is clinical. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, no, I agree with that completely. I do think that, I think that having some sort of volunteer experience, whether it is clinical or not clinical, I think does address something about your interest in caring for people when you're not getting any necessarily benefit out of it. But I don't think it's a big slam against you if you don't have that. Some people just have to work and they're working and they just don't have a whole lot of opportunity or time to do school and do work and everything. But, I do think that, that all of us, whether we're applicants to medical school or not, should really see some sort of volunteer efforts in our lives as beneficial. We learn a lot from it about ourselves and about the plight of others in this country or in our society and et cetera. Whether you're teaching, kindergartners how to read, or whether you're helping, at a art museum, whatever you're doing. Yeah, but it does show a little bit about how you are interested in impacting the world around you. So, but having said that, it's not a big slam against you if you can't do that.
Rachel likes Mapped Book Club.
Oh yeah, cool, Rachel.
Hi, thanks for hosting these. How do you recommend students get over their imposter syndrome caused fear of putting themselves out there in terms of both advocating for themselves and finding and applying for opportunities? Speaking for myself. Well, that's step one, is you're speaking for yourself. And not, I have a friend who has...
Yeah, it's asking for a friend.
Yes. It's interesting. I did, I don't know if it's come out yet. I did an Ask Dr. Gray recently about imposter syndrome. So step one, go listen to that. I've done a pre-med years episode with Mama Dr. Jones on TikTok and Instagram fame about imposter syndrome. And that was a while ago, so you can go look at that. But really, at its core, imposter syndrome is just normal doubt, and anxiety. And in the Ask Dr. Gray episode, I talked with the student. I was with a student doing this, and she had the same question. And I said, at its core, physiologically, fear and excitement are the same physiologically. And when you are about to click send on that email asking for an opportunity, when you step into the hospital the first time, third year, as someone on rotations, when you step foot in the hospital for the first times as an intern, when you step into the hospital for the first time as a fellow, when you step into the hospital for the first time as an attending, this imposter syndrome never goes away. It's your interpretation of your feelings that really makes a difference. Are you scared? Do you want to interpret those feelings as being scared, aka imposter syndrome? Or do you want to interpret those feelings as being excited? Same physiological response, right? Same increased blood pressure, increased heart rate, sweating, etc. But you're telling yourself something different. Your perception is different because you are able to interpret it differently and go, oh, this is so exciting. I've worked so hard to get here, and now I get to go hang out on the floor and help someone. I get to go hang out and be a part of the team. Versus, oh my God, I don't belong here. I'm not smart enough. This is a mistake. I knew I should have stayed up later and studied more and blah, blah, blah. All right. The schools are not going to put you in a position where you are going to hurt someone if you are not good enough to be in that position. And so you have to trust yourself and reinterpret those feelings as excitement. And that's step one. And then step two is just understanding that it never goes away, and you're just going to have to consistently tell yourself. I'm a huge fan of positive affirmations, whether you're writing them or saying them.
Self-talk,
Yeah. Gratitude journals, what you're excited for, what you're grateful for every day. The positive affirmations, whether you write them on big pieces of paper, you put them around your house, you write them on your mirror with lipstick or dry erase markers or whatever. Just really waking up and seeing in the mirror every day, like, I belong here. This is my day, whatever. I did that in the back of my my interview book. I did an affirmations thing, and it kind of came out of nowhere, and I don't really remember why I did it. I just knew that it, again, putting myself in the student's shoes, I remember that it's a scary day. And so on the last page of the book, I have these positive affirmations. Today is your day. Today you are going to impress. You have worked so hard to get to this point. You deserve to be here. You have prepared well. You are ready. Take a breath, stand tall, be confident, smile, relax, have fun. You got this. And this is probably one of the most shared things from this book, is just like a picture of that page. Just telling yourself, this is where I'm supposed to be. I'm ready for this.
That's awesome. I did a interview prep for a young lady just this morning. Just me affirming her and just talking about, you got this. Just the stuff that you just wrote there, Ryan. It's so important, and because she had unfortunately a pre-med committee in her background that had really banged on her quite a bit in terms of and it deflated her incredibly, and so she really needed that encouragement and stuff. So, and so I agree completely with that. I think self-talk and positive affirmation so important, because we all deal with imposter syndrome. Medical schools talk about it a lot because every medical student deals with it, and it's just a big issue. And I think part of the solution to it is not only positive affirmation, self-talk from yourself, in and of yourself, but is also surrounding yourself with people who are going to affirm you as well. And, whether it's peers in your pre-med class, or whether it's other friends or family members or whoever, mentors, you need to surround yourself with people that are positive, that really will help you see the best of you. And when you have negative people in your life, it has a huge effect on you. So I say jettison the negativity and seek out those people who are going to be really positive influences on you.
Yeah, and expanding a little bit, the ones who are negative, cut them out of your life or spend less time with them.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
there's a saying from, I think Jim Rohn is the original guy, but it may be older than that. Is you are the average of the 5 people you hang out with, and so really making sure that you're surrounding yourself with the people who you want to be like.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Scott, one thing I want to add to that.
Go ahead, Rachel.
Because some of the question was like, how do I even put myself out there to ask for opportunities? I definitely agree about embracing anxiety or fear as excitement. It's part of the process. Like that's literally your body telling you it's time to go do some work now, right? But also intellectually having a sort of check-in with the fact that rejection is normal and it's not personal.
Right.
No does not mean anything about you. It means not a fit, not right now. And everybody who's ever found a job they loved is probably going to tell you about all the rejections they had along the way.
Yep. That's right.
I love all the stories of like how many times Oprah failed, how many times Steven Spielberg failed, how many times Michael Jordan failed. Like all these, like we know Michael Jordan for being the person who's clutch at the end of the game, but they never talk about, oh well, he missed a ton of those shots as well.
Yeah.
So
I just want to put that out there because you can psych yourself up and get a no. And I think then it's like that repeated psyching yourself up. And some of it is, I know, and Scott, you're talking about this on one of these upcoming Thursdays in our personal traits workshops is resilience.
Yeah.
Just understanding that no is not personal. No doesn't mean forever. It means not right now, not this particular situation.
Yeah. That's a good point.
I sold, I was one of those Cutco knives sales people in college, and I loved it. I love the sales process. Yeah, and they teach you going through the sales process that the average salesperson gets 7 no's before they get a yes. And so you just have to go through that process and be okay with rejection.
Absolutely. 30% conversion for a sales rep is great. That's a good salesperson. And you know what? It's also good baseball.
Yeah, batting average. That's Hall of Fame numbers.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. Yeah, so I wanted to just expand as well. Scott, you had mentioned that you did a mock interview with a student. You are MAP's advisor at this point, so you do personal statement editing, application prep, one-on-one mock interviews, just private advising if a student is just at the beginning of their journey. So if you would like some more personalized help and want to hang out with Dr. Wright more, you can go check out map.com/services for that. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Wow, this hour's gone by fast.
It has.
Wow.
It's all fun and games.
Yeah, it is.
All right. Rachel, are we done? I think we are. We'll call it quits here.
Yeah.
Another great episode.
Yeah. I think we missed a couple. I love it when you guys ask questions, although unfortunately we kind of got a lot late in the game. But as always, you can always post when you see me list the event for next week and we'll get to you. We'll get to you then.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you everyone for hanging out. We'll see you next time.
Thank you. Absolutely. Adios.
Bye.